So much stuff coming up in the body and the mind, just different feelings and different thought patterns, suggestions as to what to do and what not to do, and all this kind of stuff that's coming up for a lot of us right now. Um, it's a lot of it is really not worth following. What I've noticed, because sometimes it's just like old. It's like a lot of it is just like old patterns kind of unraveling, old ideas kind of just coming to the surface to be released, and you know, even though sometimes they kind of seem very familiar and important, or just because just significant sometimes, doesn't necessarily mean we need to follow them. And that's why I would say having a meditative practice has been very useful for me, because I've been able to kind of discern what is useful, what is not, what is like, what's really worth following, what's not worth following. And you kind of, it really does help to have times during the day where you do just kind of sit in a sort of neutrality, and you're not chasing after your favorite thoughts, you're not pushing away your most, I don't know, you're not pushing away like the most intrusive thoughts. You just kind of are observing just where you are, and even coming to the realization that observing and what we call witnessing of thoughts and feelings really doesn't take any effort, and any sense of you being an individual witness is also witnessed as well. So this is why it's really important to have that spiritual practice, because it gives you it's sort of like an anchor, it's something that helps you, it's like something you can come back to. You can remember that you have this space, you have this capacity, you have this ability to just kind of quiet the mind, or at the very least just kind of disengage from anything that's going on in the mind, if it's useful to do so. There's always something I always come back to in my own experience, is that there's always more space. We always have more space, whether that's a space for new possibilities to come alive, or whether that's just space for just proper discernment and resting in neutrality and witnessing the flow of thoughts and feelings. And it's a very beautiful kind of realization, very sublime, because in that understanding that you're not obligated to chase after every thought that comes into your head. It frees up so much energy. It frees up so much. It like preserves your bandwidth. It gives you so much space. It shows you how much space you have. And so, in this space, you realize you do have so much space. Not only physical space, but an internal kind of expansive quality to your own being, which stretches throughout the external, stretches through the internal. It really kind of softens that distinction between internal and external, and when you realize, and helps you to realize that all is consciousness, and that your consciousness, my consciousness, it's just a word. They're just words for something that we all are, and we all are experiencing together and simultaneously. Whether we're interacting with each other directly or we're just resting by ourselves, we're still intricately interwoven into everything that's subsiding, everything that's arising as well. Everything that comes up, everything that settles back into this neutrality, this peace, this spaciousness. So, and sometimes looking at the word neutrality, hearing the word neutrality, we may feel that that's kind of a cold word, or that's sort of impersonal, like we sometimes talk about like the impartiality of witnessing, or the impersonal nature of consciousness. Resting in neutrality, it almost seems a bit mechanical or like cold, just because, again, we interpret it through that lens, because we don't, if you're not really grounded in that experience, how it actually feels to observe impartially, how it actually feels to rest in neutrality, then you're going to maybe interpret it in a more mechanical way, as we tend to do when things are more abstract and less experiential in our own lives. So this is the thing about observing and witnessing, is that it's really no different than when you rest in deep sleep, in that kind of really quiet, nourishing space where dreams and just very balancing kind of energy can arise in your life. And that itself is really not undesirable, but you could say that that's kind of an impersonal or an impartial thing, not that it's impersonal in the sense that it's cold or mechanical, but more that it's impersonal in the sense that, well, your person kind of takes a back seat, kind of like dissolves into the space, into the being. And it's like you stop being like a single tree in the forest, and you kind of settle into the whole root structure of being. So it's kind of one of those, things about ourselves and our consciousness, is that we as being, and we as beings, and we just as being itself, we are so much more than just what surface appearances might suggest. And there's so many ways that we all experience that, if we do experience it. Some people are more, their eyes are more centered on, they're more fixated, or they're more geared towards the surface of things, and that's okay. That's okay. But after a while of being more on the surface of things, you do start to catch glimpses of a deeper self, a deeper reality, a deeper presence. Maybe an all-encompassing presence, not necessarily just deeper as in physical depth, but just a more intimate. It's a more all-inclusive kind of awareness space, So you start to, and when you recognize that, coming inside and kind of coming into that space, you start to recognize that, there is more to the life than just the surface appearances might suggest. There's more to your own being, and you start to realize, at least what I've come to find in my own experience, for what that may be worth, what I've come to find is that your body and your person is more an appendage. It's more an extension of what you are. It's like an instrument, or it's sort of like an instrument. It's more like it's more an extension of who you are, rather than the whole of your being. There's a whole nother, I want to say a whole nother side to your being, but it's not really like your physical self is one half, and then your deeper self, or your truer self, is another half. It's more that you just are your truer self, and you are your higher self, and you're just kind of experiencing life through the filter of your personal self. And sometimes that filter is stronger, sometimes that filter is weaker. Sometimes your attention is more focused on the surface of reality, and other times it's more oriented into the spaciousness of your being. And yet, no matter where your attention goes, you always are the universal being. You always are the self. You always are yourself. And when you do come into rest in that sort of neutral space, that restfulness where, you're not following thoughts and feelings, and even to the point where you realize that if your attention starts to follow thoughts and feelings, that you are not your attention either. If your mind goes into a familiar pattern of thought, there's an awareness of that as well. And then you just kind of cultivate a bit of an understanding. And you look at that and you say, wow, I used to not be able to meditate. And now, because I thought every time a certain thought would come up, a certain feeling would come up, then I would get pulled away with that thought, or I get pulled away with that feeling, and then it would kind of take me out of my meditation. But the beautiful thing that I've realized, and maybe you've realized this too, is that the tendency of the mind to get pulled into thought and feelings is completely observable within the space of your being. And ultimately, meditation is an abidance in the space of being. It's a resting in the space of being. It's simply staying as awareness of, of the tendencies to come in and come out and go up and down. Because ultimately, your being is not a thing of duality. And so your being cannot be pushed and pulled around. Your mind can be pushed and pulled around. Your attention can follow different paths and suggestions. Your body can feel different things, but these are really, this is the subtlety of it all, because these are really all vibrations within the field of being that actually you always are and have always been. And this is one of those things that I don't always talk about these things, because it is very subject to interpretation, because everybody has a unique sense of who they are as an individual. And I really wouldn't want to go up to somebody and say, hey, being a person is bad. Being this or identifying in this way is bad, because I don't think that that's true, for one thing. But it's also, everybody comes to this realization of the deeper reality, the deeper self, just the connection with spirit and the reality of what we call God. Everybody comes to this realization in their own way. So when I describe these things, this is more maybe an Advaita or a Zen or a non-duality kind of perspective. But I think, at a certain point when you do kind of come into this realization, the distinctions between different spiritual paths start to dissolve, and they start to soften. Because it's like we often make that analogy or hear that analogy of many streams flowing towards a single ocean. And the same way, there's many paths up to the top of the mountain, and these are kind of spiritual metaphors for how many different ways there are to find the truth and to find God and to find oneself. And like those individual streams that can be very distinct and very unique in the way they flow, but as they converge at that ocean, they start to merge into one another, and the lines between one stream and the other they really start to kind of dissolve and erode away. And then once they're in the ocean, they're just it's all water. It's all water, big spacious expanse. full of possibility, full of nourishment. And this is really the space that you find. I think it feels right to say that this is a space that is here for everybody. And it's always here and it's always available, and you can find it and you can realize it at any point in time. But the funny thing about life is that even though something is right there beneath our very feet and in the very fibers of our body and is all around us all the time, we don't always realize it until forces kind of aspire in a certain way. Forces kind of come together in a certain way to really like bring it home, to really like something clicks into place and you're like, oh, I get it. It's like, we all know that God is real and spirit is real and that this is a boundless mystery, this life. We all know this on some level, but to really recognize it in that moment of clarity, that it's often very a blissful, expansive revelation, that takes a certain willingness and a certain, it's like you have to be ready on an energetic level and ready on a mental level, and it's like all the different aspects of our more physical individual person, they have to kind of be in the right alignment. They have to kind of be together. It's like everything has to work together in some way or another. And I don't want you to think that you have to be, to do these really rigorous things in order to realize the truth, or like, oh, I have to align all my chakras and I have to do this. It's like, it's actually, the beautiful thing about like non-duality, a non-dual recognition, and this spaciousness of being, is that it exists no matter how balanced you are on an energetic level or how imbalanced you are. And oftentimes people actually come into this realization much faster because their imbalances are so, present in their lives and are so sometimes wild and unpredictable. And that's kind of one of the things about what I've really found. I found such gratitude and love in my heart for this being, because it's not something that is only exclusively available to those who are very, what we could call spiritually gifted, or in good health, or are energetically aligned. It's always here to support every individual person. It's just that the individual person has to be willing to receive that help, because in the duality of life there is the support of the divine and the support of the underlying consciousness, the underlying being, but there's also the human aspect, which can either choose to align themselves with this understanding, with this spaciousness, or they can choose to kind of do things on their own. And I think of anyone of sufficient maturity in their own path will come to find that it's really kind of a foolish undertaking to try and to advance and to mature as an individual without the support of the deeper recognition, without the support of the divine, without the support of the universal being. Because everything that you do is really only good as the foundation upon which it's built. And it's very much, it brings to mind the analogy of a house. You can build a house and you could make the most beautiful house. You could have all your favorite things in it and all kinds of acquisitions and golden, beautiful treasures. And yet if the foundation upon which it's built is, just not solid, or it's just maybe not even there, then the house eventually is going to fall apart. It's going to buckle, and it's just going to get lopsided, and it's going to get kind of crooked and not going to be the thing that you wanted it to be. So this is kind of, what what you realize. And also, if you do find yourself trying to like kind of force your way through life as an individual, trying to grab life by the balls, and think you're, just we all know what it's like. We all know what it's like to, when our ego is kind of running the show, maybe giving too much importance to the ego, or too much importance to, or just trying too hard to do everything on our own. We know what that's like, and it becomes such a relief to come back and to realize you are supported, and you don't have to really strain and stress and struggle just to to kind of manifest results, or to like create something in your life that's really already being offered to you without nearly as much effort on your part.